Thank you very much. So it was almost actually about this time, about 8 years ago, that I started talking about a lot of new accuracy and location. And I was kind of looking back about it, thinking about it today. It was actually at the FCC, a presentation we did talking about a problem. So I'll move the mic up a little closer to me now. Now I'll get the thumbs up from the back that I'm doing it right. So it was about 8 years ago, or about 10 years ago, in 2006, 11 years ago, that there was a call that kind of woke me up and saw the problem. It was in Guthrie, Oklahoma, and it was a young girl that was about 6 years old, and her mom had a medical condition, and her mom had taught her how to dial 911 by singing a song. And so at that time, her mom passed out, and the girl picked up her cell phone, her mom's cell phone, and dialed 911. Well, at that time, she was inside the house, and they didn't have a wireline phone. They'd already replaced it with their cellular phone. She called 911. All they got was a phase 1 location. They got a cell ID location, and they couldn't find out where she was. She didn't know what her address was. She didn't really, she couldn't give her mom's name or where they were. They finally found her. It took about 20 minutes to find her. They found her by sort of superhuman efforts of sending the fire truck up and down the road until the dispatcher heard the sound. When it got the loudest and when it started going away, they told the truck to stop, and she went out on her front porch and she found her. So at that point, we really started to look at what are technologies that can prevent that from happening in the future. And a lot of work in that 11 years has been done, and we're now really at the edge of technologies really starting to change and really can help solve that problem. There's a lot of companies that are here today that are part of helping to change that technology. The FCC has done a lot of efforts of putting requirements out there that will help spur that technology. And I was going to talk about a few of the technologies and a few of the things that are really starting to come about. And I have the nice thing is I have a pretty short presentation. I only have a few slides, and I'll kind of go through it pretty quickly. There's a lot of things that have happened, a lot of the technologies, and I'm excited to see where we're really going to be going on this. So the one of the technologies that wasn't there that got me excited, and this is one of the things we really started looking at back in about that time, and we see it going out, is Bluetooth beacons. So we have the problem with all of the wireline phones being replaced. Everybody's replacing their wireless phone with a wireline phone with a wireless phone. Wireless is great. It gets you to make your calls everywhere. But the location technologies, when we first did wireless for 911, was built back in 2000. It was really designed the fact that people would be outdoors. They would use it in their car, and it wasn't the aspect they'd be utilizing in their house, replacing their home phone. I worked at a cellular carrier at that time. We were looking at it, had no thought really that the cost would get down to the point that I'd ever want to replace my home phone with a cell phone. It would never be cheaper, it would be easier to use. But that's where we are now. Majority of the phones are being replaced, and most of the 911 calls that are coming through now are coming in on wireless devices. A few years ago, a technology called Bluetooth Low Energy came out that really showed us there's a way that really could help. Really, I see as that residential situation. I really see the biggest value of this is in the houses, getting back to more equivalent of the wireline 911. Bluetooth Low Energy is the device that you may have heard about, you may not have heard about, but most of you are familiar with it, even not realizing you are. The Fitbit type devices are Bluetooth Low Energy. A lot of the watches you see, the smart watches, are Bluetooth Low Energy. The Nike device that goes in your running shoe is Bluetooth Low Energy. It's a really kind of a cool device that's gotten very inexpensive. Here's an example of one we're using for doing with 911. It's really this module in the center. There's a lot of circuit board on here just to carry this little module, which this little module is a lot of real estate space just to carry one little chip, about 2 millimeters square. The bill of materials for building these things is getting down to about $5, and so the cost is very low. This little device right here that actually transmits location, it transmits out location about 10 times a second, and it does it on these 2 AA batteries for about a year. And so that's where the low energy part of BLE, or Bluetooth Low Energy, comes from. Very low power. The part about this was it was a whole new technology that was really derived around technology that would help with location. Unlike some other areas, location was built into Bluetooth Low Energy. And what we saw these as being is some type of a beacon that could be put into a house and give you wireline equivalents of 911. A lot of work is being done around that, and the nice part is we're starting to see it built into the standards and into the handsets. Probably, hopefully, maybe when we're here next year or the year after that, we'll start seeing actually this being affecting of actual 911 calls. The idea is that you could have a device like this, or this is a sort of an envision of how it could be, that just plugs into an outlet that you have, and then any phone within range of this device, once it's been set up, any phone that dials 911 will now pass the address of where you are. It's not just passing the XY, putting a dot on a map. It's actually passing the dispatchable address, very much like we had back when we had wireline 911. That's why I'm saying bringing back the world of wireline, that type of location accuracy. You hear a lot about the need. You may have heard about the technology being built, being designed by the wireless carriers and the public safety of NEAD, National Emergency Address Database. The NEAD is a database that helps store the location information of this to make it available for all phones that may be out there. And so it's really, this is, to me, is a really exciting technology. It's sort of the John Oliver type show saying, how come I can order a pizza and then they can find where I am, but 911 can't? Well, the big reason is ordering a pizza is using a commercial location technology. 911 has been using a different location technology. Now utilizing stuff like this and other commercial location, it really can bring on the idea of ordering a pizza into 911, it brings it together. We've got several technologies that are being looked at on providing that dispatchable location. You have the technology of Bluetooth Low Energy, which happens to be just one of them. There's not going to be one solution for everywhere. There's no, I would love to see it, but we'll never see some devices like this being put in everybody's home. But it'll be put in some of the homes. Wi-Fi access points is another one. We have billions of Wi-Fi access points across the country and the world. Provisioning those with an address helps get us an address into the house. It's not quite as good as Bluetooth because we can't really tell how far we are away from the Wi-Fi very easily as with Bluetooth, but it's still really good. The two together make it even better. We have a way of associating addresses if we know where your billing address is, or we know where you've ordered a pizza because your location technology was accurate order of pizza and you gave them an address. We can pull that public records and associate with your number to provide another level of giving a dispatchable address. The idea that when people utilize their phones with Google Maps and they're driving around, they're contributing to a public database to say where all these Wi-Fi access points. That data can be utilized. That helps you order a pizza. That also now, by utilizing commercial location, can provide it to 911 to provide an XY of where you are. Not quite as good of an address, but better than where we were in the past, where the girl in Guthrie, all she could do is have their cell ID, which happened to be a 3-mile radius around her house. So all of these get us better. The big thing to think about as the location technologies change is there's not one solution to all the problems. There's not just one thing isn't going to solve it. It's a combination of multiple solutions that are going to solve that. Bluetooth Low Energy beacon, Wi-Fi access points, billing addresses, commercial location, the Wi-Fi location, all of these locations come together to help it. One of the challenges we're going to have is how is that location going to be presented to the call takers on the screen? And actually, I think this is probably one of the biggest challenges we have going forward. How do you present an address and an XY, present it together in a really usable format that can be there? I'll kind of give an example of a lot of PSAPs that I go to see that scares me to death on what I see. I come into the PSAP and I see a display with a call coming in. A phase 1 call comes in, a cell ID location. It draws a dot on the screen, just a dot. And it says WPH1 for a wireless phase 1 call. They get an update, they get a wireless phase 2 call, more accurate, a GPS type of location. Throws another dot on the screen. It says a phase 2 call. Is like, how do you know the difference? Oh, because it says phase 1 and phase 2. Well, how accurate is it? I don't know. It just says phase 2 is more accurate than phase 1. That's not the case anymore. We have cell sites that have very small coverage that may be very accurate. We may get a phase 2 location that's very inaccurate because you're inside of a building. That presentation of data is very important now on how you present that, because not all cell sites are the same size and not all phase 2 locations are the same size. We could get one of these being a location that's very accurate, or it could be another type of a phase 2 location. So that presentation, getting standards around that, getting consistencies and training and education on how to interpret this data is really important. There's actually one of the things I often say is there's one piece of data that comes in of a location that I think is the almost as critical as the XY itself. It's uncertainty. About half of the PSAPs I go into today suppress uncertainty being displayed because it's not understood. And this data is really critical on how we can interpret it. As we're getting these new technologies and these new XYs where there's a bunch of different locations besides just being a cell ID and a GPS, understanding and presenting that information is going to be absolutely critical. One last thing I have to say that was talked about, actually I think my one last slide got left out. That may have been why Mary Boyd asked why I was going to talk about this one. It's because the slide's not in here. Save the slides too quick on your presentation, don't proof it, lesson to be learned. MLTS. There's a lot of talk that's already been talked about MLTS today in the multi-line phone systems. One of the real issues is there's not consistency around the country. Hopefully legislation and regulation and such will bring some consistency so that as the kids we have and the folks we have today that know and learn how to dial 911 from the digits 911, that'll be consistent on how they go through and how people utilize it between enterprise locations, hotels, and office buildings to make it consistent on how it's done. There's a lot of technologies out there that make MLTS work for, we have services today that provide location information, that easily provide enterprises location information, and we have there's routing abilities to get it into the native 911 network. So there's technologies that are available today. Hopefully the regulations will also allow and encourage the locations to deploy it. I've probably gone over my time because I love to talk, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much.